Thanks, Chair.
Senator Rice.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, gentlemen and Minister. Look, I'll start with the Western Distributor, or the Westgate Tunnel, as it's now had a name change to. So you just replied to Senator Sterle that you're still waiting on information. Can you tell me what information you have requested from the Victorian Government or the proponents that you are still waiting on?
Senator, we've asked the Victorian Government for a number of details about the business case, including some details about the modelling underpinning that business case and some sensitivity tests around the economic analysis for that.
And can you be a bit more specific about the modelling details that you've requested?
Senator, as Mr Davies has indicated, that evaluation is still underway.
Yeah, but can you be more specific about what you've requested of the Victorian Government?
We'd prefer not to be, Senator.
On what basis?
Yes, on what basis would you prefer not to be?
Because the evaluation is still underway. We're trying to work with the Victorian Government to progress that, and obviously the matters that we've requested are matters of some sensitivity for the Victorian Government.
So basically on the basis of that they're not in the... so you're basically claiming public interest immunity then for the request of that information?
Well, Senator, for us to undertake our evaluations requires or depends on a trusting relationship between the proponent and us as the assessor. They provide us information in confidence and we respect that confidence to the extent that we can.
When did you request this various modelling information of the Victorian Government?
Senator, I think as we indicated last time round, our last request was in November last year.
In November 2016, we're now in May 2017, so 6 months on and you haven't received that information as yet?
That's correct.
Do you have an indication from the Victorian Government as to whether they are going to fulfil your request and when?
Senator, I think Mr Murdoch indicated last time round that the Victorian Government's proceeding with that project. They've not indicated to us whether they're keen to proceed with our evaluation of that project, and that's really a matter for them.
So do you have that certainty from the Victorian Government then that they are not going to provide you with that information?
No, Senator, we don't.
So do you expect to get that information?
Senator, I think based on the Victorian Government's progress in the project and the time that it's taken, we are not holding our breath. However, if Victoria should choose to come back to us with that information, that would be great.
To me, that sounds like it's a concern if Infrastructure Australia is set up as an independent authority to assess major infrastructure projects, that information isn't forthcoming from a project proponent.
Senator, I think Mr Murdoch indicated last time that when Victoria made the proposal to the Commonwealth, they were seeking Commonwealth funding at the time. That's why they forwarded the business case to Infrastructure Australia for evaluation. Obviously, the Victorian Government's chosen to progress that project regardless of Commonwealth funding, and that's really up to them. So
can you clarify for me, is there no Commonwealth funding going into the overall project, including because the project was packaged up in the business case with the Monash upgrade as well? My understanding was that there was Commonwealth funding going into the Monash project.
Perhaps if I can assist, Senator, that's correct. There is no federal funding allocated to the Western Distributor project.
In total, so including the Monash?
The first stage of the Monash is being funded fully by Victoria, $400 million worth. The Commonwealth's commitment of $500 million is to subsequent stages of the Monash, not to the initial stage, which is being funded by Victoria as part of this package.
Do you see this as a problem if Infrastructure Australia are going to do an evaluation of the major transport infrastructure needs, that even if a project is being not funded by the Commonwealth, that all the information about that project isn't being provided to you? Because, I mean, there are various options on the table as to how to meet the infrastructure needs that the Westgate Tunnel is meeting. And so how can you, as Infrastructure Australia, do an assessment of which is the most appropriate project to meet those needs if the information isn't being provided to you?
So we have the same situation, Senator, for all projects, that we're totally reliant on getting good information from state and territory proponents, mostly, occasionally the private sector. That relies on them providing comprehensive business case and being collaborative, providing answers to our questions in a timely fashion. That's a normal course of doing business. It becomes particularly challenging when, with that example, there isn't any funding being sought. There's no incentive for them to provide the additional information we're providing. So we're kind of caught midway through doing our assessment, which is frustrating from our point of view. But that's, we're just totally reliant on receiving the information from whoever's proposing a project.
So, I mean, Mr. Parkinson, you said the reason why you can't tell us any more detail about the modelling that you've asked for is that, you have a confidential, relationship and you want to have a good, positive relationship with the Victorian government. Is that being challenged by the fact that this information isn't being provided?
No, Senator. We maintain a good relationship with the Victorian government. As I've indicated, it's up to them whether they want to pursue this current evaluation on current signs. That's not what they're doing, but that is entirely up to them. We do expect to receive other business cases from Victoria in the future, and we work to maintain a strong working relationship with them.
Does Infrastructure Australia have concerns about the adequacy of the business case that has been developed for the Western Distributor?
Senator, we've not been able to finalise our evaluation as yet.
Do you have concerns? Do you have concerns that as to whether the Western Distributor, Westgate Tunnel, has been evaluated appropriately?
Senator, as I've indicated, we're still in the progress of doing that assessment.
But you're not progressing with the assessment because you haven't got further information, is what I hear you saying.
That's exactly correct, Senator.
So are you concerned then that there will be inadequate assessment of the business case by either yourselves or indeed the Victorian government?
Well, Senator, we're not able to finish our evaluation as yet. Obviously,
and you have no expectation that you'll be able to finish your evaluation because the details of the modelling aren't being made.
As I said, if Victoria would choose to come back to us with that information, that would be great, and we would be able to progress that evaluation. Have
you had communication with the Victorian government about why they haven't decided to furnish you with the details that you have asked for?
Senator, we have ongoing conversations with the Victorian government.
But that wasn't my question. My question is whether you have asked the Victorian government about why they have not been able to furnish
Senator,
you with these details.
During those regular conversations that we have asked whether that information will be forthcoming. They've indicated not at present, but they've certainly not ruled it out.
Right. Have you asked them why that information is not forthcoming at this stage?
No, Senator.
No? What's your understanding as to why the information isn't forthcoming?
As I explained, Senator, I understand the Victorian government's proceeding with that project.
Yes, but it seems to be a bit of a lack of curiosity or a lack of questioning as to why that information isn't forthcoming. I mean, surely if it's useful to Infrastructure Australia, they have said it's pretty clear that you don't expect to receive that information, but that it would be valuable to you to do an appropriate assessment of the business case. I would be very frustrated if I was in your shoes. I mean, are you frustrated that that information hasn't been delivered?
Senator, we've invested some resources into undertaking that evaluation, and as with all evaluations, we'd like to finish it. However, we understand it's entirely up to Victoria whether they give us the further information we've required. They've chosen not to do so at this stage. That's their call. We respect them. We want to continue working with them on other projects.
Are you evaluating other projects that would also have an impact, be meeting the transport need that the Western Distributor is meeting?
Not at present. We don't have any other business cases from Victoria at the moment.
But you've previously assessed, well, there's the Melbourne Metro tunnel, and you've previously done an assessment of the East-West link. So you completed assessments of those?
Senator, certainly in the last year we completed assessments of Melbourne Metro and the M80 in Melbourne. And also the Murray Basin Rail Project in rural Victoria.
I'm talking about the Western Corridor that the Westgate Distributor is meeting the transport need for. To me, it beggars belief that you can have an organisation like Infrastructure Australia that is set up to make assessments of what's the best way of meeting a transport need when information about a particular project that is set up to meet that transport need isn't made available to you.
So, Senator, we totally rely on the detailed planning that each state and territory government does, particularly for transport planning and land use planning. So most state and territory governments produce their own land use plans, their own integrated transport plans. The way they sequence the projects within those plans is completely, at their discretion in terms of what they see as their priorities, where they're seeking Commonwealth contribution, then over $100 million, then we'll often get to see those projects. But those projects are part of a bigger picture, and the sequencing of those investments and projects, the way they fit together as part of the broader land use planning is something completely under the control of the state or territory government. That's often an area, and right now that's an area we're asking a lot of questions around, because it's important for us to understand that holistic picture. But once again, it's up to them what they send us. We can only evaluate what they send. The extra questions we ask more often than not with all these projects are around the bigger picture, because that information is often missing, and we need it to understand how does this fit into the bigger picture.
And so that's the information that would be relevant, in terms of that bigger picture. Having the details that you need to assess the modelling of the Western Distributor be very relevant for you to be able to sort of put that bigger picture together. Is that the case?
It is with all projects, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Infrastructure Australia, you're set up. Initially you were assessing on a project-by-project basis, and now you have got this mandate to be having the bigger picture. Doesn't the fact that if the information is not forthcoming from state governments challenge your ability to undertake that bigger picture work?
So we're very fortunate, Senator, that when the amendments to the legislation went through in 2014, one of the new requirements on Infrastructure Australia was to do an audit, and that's provided us with a great evidence base. So that was published in 2015. That's provided a great evidence base to see where the challenges are over at least the next 15 years. So we used that to update the priority list 2 years ago, and that's still forming the basis for where we see the problems that need to be solved. So we've got that big picture, but we're still reliant mostly on state and territory governments to come back with their proposals for solutions, and that's something, in terms of Victoria, they've come back principally with the Western Distributor project and also the Melbourne Metro Tunnel, which is a very significant project. So they're the two solutions we've seen so far proposed by the Victorian government.
But the Western Distributor is or isn't on your priority list?
Not directly, but it's part of a bigger road.
Could it,
future problem that we need to solve.
Would it be able? For me, you could not put the Western Distributor on your priority list unless you are confident that in the modelling that underpins the whole project.
Yeah, so it's not on the priority list right now. We're still undertaking the assessment, but what is on the priority list is the need to provide future capacity and solve congestion problems across Melbourne. So that's still a problem we're seeking to solve. The proposal from Victorian government to solve or partially solved that was Western Distributor, but also, you know, it's important to say that Melbourne Metro is also a kind of game changer in terms of rail capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, that's the point that I'm getting at, is that there are many ways of meeting that transport need, and I remain to be convinced that the Western Distributor is the best way of meeting that transport need. Do you remain to be convinced of that as well?
Yes, we're still doing our assessment, so...
But your assessment stalled. This is the frustration.
So hopefully we'll be provided with the information that we've asked for, and we can complete the assessment.
Mr. Parkinson was just very much gave me the answer that you don't expect to receive that information.
That's a matter for the Victorian government.
Yes, but Infrastructure Australia does not expect to receive the information from the Victorian government that would enable you to do a full assessment of the Western Distributor and to determine whether it's an appropriate project to be supported.
That's a question that would have to be directed to the Victorian government.
But from Infrastructure Australia's perspective, you have a mandate to be making recommendations on projects to meet transport needs, and you are currently stalled because you have not been provided with information from Victoria to enable you to make that assessment. Is that the case?
That's correct.
Yes. Yeah. Look, I just wanted to clarify, just in addition to that, that one of the pieces of information that you have requested, which I understand you still have not received, are the independent peer reviews that were undertaken by the Victorian government in their assessment of the Western Distributor. Can I confirm that you still have not got those independent peer reviews?
That's correct, Senator. We have received from the Victorian government the panel report into the unsolicited proposal some years ago now. We received that earlier this year. That was in response to our request for independent peer reviews. We've not received any other independent peer reviews. We're not aware of any other independent peer reviews.
But there are, I think we confirmed at a previous estimate session that there was that panel report, but there were also independent peer reviews that were done of the transport modelling and the economic modelling that the Victorian government for quite a while did not even acknowledge that they existed, but my understanding is that we confirmed at previous estimates hearings that in fact that they did exist and that you had requested those.
Senator, we expect that such reports would exist. They would for most projects.
Yes.
We do not know in this case that those reports exist. I think you indicated that your colleague in the Victorian Parliament had a response to a question which might indicate that those reports exist. We are not aware whether those reports exist.
But you have specifically requested those reports, and you have not received a response from the Victorian government. They haven't told you they don't exist. They have just not replied to your request.
As I indicated, they've given us a copy of the independent panel report.
But that wasn't what you asked for.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.